What's up, everyone? So for 2025, I thought I might have a goal of reading less books, but bigger books, devoting more time to denser topics, something like that. It was a loose goal. But in January 2025, I did fail that pretty massively. I ended up reading a lot of books. Some of them good, some of them not so good. But I'm going to go over them, tell you if I like them or not, and if I recommend them. And I'll talk about February, have a couple plans, nothing too strict. But before we get into the books, I wanted to let you know that I am of a fickle mind, and I've already deleted the Substack that I promoted a couple videos ago. Substack turned out to not be beneficial for my purposes of just uploading book reviews. So now I've switched to a WordPress website where I have a lot of the book reviews for the books that I'm going to talk about in this video. So I will link those. You don't have to subscribe or click on them. Just know that they're there because I like writing the reviews anyway. And the first book I actually don't have a copy of because it's from the library. But it's The Assassination of Margaret Thatcher and Other Stories by Hilary Mantel. Mantel's famous for Wolf Hall, but I found this one at the library. And the stories are really boring. I didn't like it so much. Check the review for other thoughts. Next up, we got All Fires the Fire by Julio Cortazar. This is an early collection of his short stories. And Cortazar is someone who was recommended to me by Ruben from To Readers It May Concern on YouTube. He's got a great channel. Thank you, Ruben. I loved Cortazar. Well, I love him. I'm not done yet. I have one story left. But I think this might be the best short story collection I've ever read. It's so immersive, and the writing is just beautiful. I think it's even better than Garcia Marquez, at least what I've read of each so far. But yeah, the Latin American boom. Come on, I love that stuff. That's great. Next up, we got Mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis. I read this with a friend of mine, and Mere Christianity is an introduction to the Christian faith. I think it was originally adapted from Lewis's broadcast lectures during World War II, but he expanded it into a whole introduction. And it serves as a decent primer for Christianity for the unaware or the layman. But in apologetics terms, I don't think Lewis's arguments had enough strength or backing to be like quintessential Christian apologetics. So this is a decent book. Lewis does cover Christian morality well, but the size of the book is a little too brief to actually get into the nitty-gritty. So it's a good avenue to look forward to different books on Christian theology. Next up, first novel, Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe. I thought this was going to be like a first contact novel between pre-colonial Africa and colonial Europe. And it was, but we had to wait like 75% of the book to get that. And the first 3/4 was this kind of boring setting the scene of more primitive tribal life with our main character Okonkwo. And yeah, I thought it was dull. I thought there were too many side characters that didn't matter. The themes I thought were important, but the actual plot, the story was lackluster, and that affected my enjoyment of the book as a whole. So I'd still recommend that everyone read Achebe. I think it's an important book, but it might not be for everyone. Check out my review online for more thoughts. All right, my third short story collection. We got Hemingway's The Snows of Kilimanjaro and Other Stories. Now, this is my second Hemingway after Old Man and the Sea, and I think this collection was a better introduction than Old Man and the Sea. The range of stories that Hemingway can cover with his unique voice, I think he does a good job. If you're a Hemingway fan and you haven't read it, it won't be a bad read. All right, getting into some politics books. We have Invisible Doctrine, The Secret History of Neoliberalism by George Monbiot and Peter Hutchison. So this book kind of explains what neoliberalism is. It's a worldview / philosophy that they say has pervaded the modern existence. It's kind of intertwined with capitalism and consumerism and individualism. Lots of isms. Liberalism too, but this is neo, it's newer. But I didn't know anything about neoliberalism before reading this book. Just picked it up randomly at Barnes & Noble, and I think I was really enlightened by what they had to say. I haven't written a review yet, but I will. Yeah, this book. Next up, we got Super Habits by Andrew Abella, PhD. I got this for Christmas from my mother, and it's a book. It's called The Universal System for a Successful Life. But I think she got me the book because it's from a local college, and it's about virtue. And the main point of this book is that virtues are habits, and that's the only thing you need to maintain to have a good and happy life. Like, you don't really need to read all these other habit books or rules for life books. You can, it's fine, whatever, but he says that you have to establish your virtues first. But it's all based on Thomas Aquinas, and I think the book was written poorly. It could have been edited more. The writing was childlike for a guy that puts PhD on the front cover. So I think I said in my review, you'd probably just be better off reading Aquinas at that point. But interesting perspective, unique voice in habit literature. All right, the biggest book on this list, we got Debt by David Graeber. Now, David Graeber is one of my favorite writers of the last 6 months. R.I.P. Now, this is the 5,000 year history of debt. Fascinating, I know. But it's kind of a anthropological economics book / history. Graeber initially dispels some of the myths of mainstream economics. Then he goes into the history of debt slavery, peonage, credit, loans. Graeber is an anthropologist by trade, so he gets really giddy going into anthropological studies, and those make me snooze. So this book took a while. It was long, but I think it was good. I just didn't understand as much as I would have liked. But I am going to brute force my way into economic knowledge. So I was glad to at least to have read this. And I'll probably come back once I know more about economics. All right, I just finished this one, Sapiens by Yuval Noah Harari. This is the brief history of humankind. And what can I say? It's very brief. It's like 500 pages with big font. Super brief. This was interesting enough. Harari is a pretty good writer for a popular historian. But there's no sources. And when I say there's no sources, there are sources, there's a few. But I think that makes it even worse because there are so many claims in here that Harari makes that are unsourced. And then he'll source, like, in a chapter, like 3 different statistics. But he won't source any of the outlandish claims that he's making or anything. So it seems highbrow and mocking of him to write this book. Especially in his, like, he was in his, like, mid-30s. He's writing a brief history of humankind. Like, I don't believe you. I don't believe that you could write this. Well, he did write it, but it's not very good. But Harari does have a lot of interesting points that he makes that I think do warrant further consideration. I only finished this a couple days ago, so I'm still in the process of taking down my notes and writing review. This will probably be a long review because there's so much to delve into. But yeah, Sapiens. Second to last book, 1931 by Tobias Straumann. Debt Crisis and the Rise of Hitler. I just finished this like 30 minutes ago. And was it interesting? Not really. It's basically a book about why the American and European powers that forced reparations upon Germany following World War I, which who's to say if it was justified? Probably, seeing as they did that war, Germany did. But in making the reparations, things kind of didn't work out the way the American and Europeans thought it would, and Germany couldn't really pay anything back because they were saddled with debts. And because they were saddled with debts, they had to go through austerity programs, and then the German people suffered, and then the radical parties gained ground because they said, hey, why are you making us suffer? Like that was kind of a layup for them, a layup for Hitler. He's like, what are you guys doing? Like, the country's in tatters. I would do the right thing. And that's kind of how he got into power because of debt. So 2 books about debt in 1 month. That's strange. That was not on my bingo card for the first month of the year. This was okay. The chronology was abysmal. I had no idea when I was. All right, last book, If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio. This draws the inevitable comparisons to The Secret History by Donna Tartt, but it is quite similar. It's a group of Shakespeare students at an art conservatory, I think in Illinois, and they're all pompous and arrogant, and they quote Shakespeare all the time because that's all they do is perform Shakespeare at their school. And there's a murder, of course, and you gotta like trying to figure out who did the murder and what's going on, blah 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 blah. And you might think I didn't like this book, but I thought it was great. I loved how just devilish these characters were. Like, I definitely wouldn't like them in real life, but just to read about these prancing Shakespeare loonies and their sick relationships to each other, because they really can't form connections outside of their in-group because they're too strange. But yeah, this mystery wasn't that great, but I just liked reading the Shakespeare connections. It's a solid book. Yeah, so thanks for watching. I've got reviews for a lot of these books on my website already. So if you want to read the reviews, they go more into depth on each book. Oh. Regarding February reading plans, I only have 2 books that are planned because I hate making plans. I always break them. But the first book on my list is The Republic by Plato. Doing a buddy read with a friend. I'm going to try and read this in the first half of the month. This will be my first Plato. And in the second half of the month, I'm reading, I don't have it with me, The Lost History of Liberalism. I don't even know who it's by. It's coming in the mail soon. I believe I'm reading this with Triumphal Reads and some other people. I'm not actually acquainted with them yet, so I can't say for certain, but I'll tag one of them. Maybe they can shed some light. Or, I don't know. I think I'm reading the book, though. It sounds interesting. See ya.